AI is already rewriting the rules of education, but the question is, are we ready for what comes next? From the classroom to the workplace, artificial intelligence is reshaping the way we learn, teach, and work, often faster than institutions can adapt. Recent data from Keiser University reveals that 85 to 87% of today's educators believe AI and its related technologies will permanently transform the future of education. The question remains not whether or not change is coming. However, we should be asking ourselves who benefits and who gets left behind, and whose values are being coded into the future. For some answers to those probing and unique questions, I enlisted the expertise of my friend, Dr. James Maisiri. He's a researcher, educator, and intellectual whose work sits at the intersection of sociology, robotics, artificial intelligence, and ethics. His research explores how emerging technologies are transforming labor, education, and societal structure across Africa, with a strong focus on inclusive and responsive digital transformation. Dr. Maisiri has also contributed to key publications such as the Journal of Brick Studies, collaborative research with UNESCO, along with opinion pieces in The Star and The Guardian. The doctor is also recognized as a leading voice when it comes to AI ethics, inequalities, and the societal implications of technological change. And he joined me this week to tell me more. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Doctor, if you're ready, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program. And I'm super excited to learn about your contributions in education, research, the workforce, and everything in between. It's great to see you, and thank you so very much for being here today.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. What were you curious about?
Absolutely. So I know, Doctor, that you are a public intellectual and educator and researcher whose work focuses on both emerging technologies, robotics, and education, and how it's really transforming things like labor and the workforce. So I'm wondering if we can start our conversation by you telling me about your work across Africa and what makes you so fabulous, my friend.
Sure. Okay, so I'm James. I did my PhD was on how AI, Internet of Things, and robotics affect migrant African labor. So I'm very interested in how these technologies affect Africans within the African context, because a lot of AIs are made within the global north in Western societies for their problems, and Africa tends to just copy paste those technologies in our context, and sometimes that can bring about a lot of problems in our context. So I look at how these technologies affect us on the in the workplace and also within the educational sector. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about digital transformation and its correlation to the digital world across Africa and how, technology and AI is making a difference when we talk about educating people across Africa. What do you want people to know about how the digital transformation is acting as a competitive advantage, my friend?
Okay, so for many African governments, they believe that AI is going to allow them to leapfrog forward with their economy, like to improve their economy using these technologies, right? So, for example, within the educational sector, AI has been shown in many studies to help low resource schools, like schools from that are underprivileged, schools that are poor, with their to improve their educational outcomes. Like for example, an AI tutor app called Rory, which you can use on WhatsApp. So even if there's no internet or in those rural areas within Africa, this technology has helped these students to learn maths, and as in 6 months, we've seen these kids have mass improvements, especially children who struggled with maths before. So because of these technologies doing personalized learning, where the AI learns about the specific student that the technology is tutoring and trains and teaches that student at the student's pace. Um, that individualized learning seems to, there's been results that have shown that it seems to be yielding results and helping African students go forward. Um, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm curious, Doctor, just to get your overall take on how technology and AI is really reshaping the way that we can look at societal advancements and working towards making progress in society and sort of overcoming our cultural and political divides and the way we view the world. So, what do you think technologies role is and AI's role is in really making us, have a different approach to the conversation of progress from a societal standpoint. What are your thoughts there?
Well, it's not just only about progress, right? It can make progress, but there's also serious dangers within the African context. So I'll give you an example of, well, I guess this example is not in the African context, but I'll give you an example of a danger. Actually, let me just give you one in the African context, right? So 68% of all loans that are given to small, medium businesses on the African continent are AI governed, right? So you might say that's a competitive advantage because it's increasing efficiency and getting these businesses to get these loans to move forward. But the disadvantage is that a lot of these systems tend to have what is called AI bias. So a study found that women-led construction businesses were 52% less likely to be given a loan by these AI systems. And whenever they did get the loan, they received much less, but at a higher interest. So it goes to show that even though AI can be guised as an advantage moving forward, there are serious biases and disadvantages that we need to think about when we just adopt these technologies within these societies. And you might ask, why would an AI have a bias against women within the African context? And the answer for that is long, but one of the reasons is because these AI systems are trained in Western societies and they don't understand the unique African histories of where women were refused title deeds. And all of this data points is fed into the system, and this output is put out where there's like a bias against women in this regard.
Yeah, and Doctor, I'm curious to ask you about your thoughts on how we guard against technology and AI not replacing the human capital and making sure that humans are still a part of AI and its sort of progression in society. So, how do you think we can marry AI and human capital at the same time?
So there has to be an active forced by government to make sure that they reskill the population. So if you look at China, for example, they introduced it in Beijing, but they're also going to push it across the entire country. They have a policy that says as soon as you're 6 years old, you must be exposed to AI literacy. So as young as 6 years old in schools, children are being taught how to do AI literacy moving forward. Governments, right? You can have ministers of job creations. Like in China, they have a minister of human resource and social security. I believe that's the full title, right? Where their job is specifically that as technology advances at a fast pace, they need to input and collaborate with other partners and input ways and pathways to make sure that their human capital continuously upskills. Degrees in the traditional sense in universities are struggling to catch up with to training students to have the skill sets that are needed with the fast changing climate that's happening within the labor market. So we need to adopt what we call continuous learning, where every 6 months or every single year or every 2 years, you get a certificate within your specific field, within your specific degree, and you just continuously learn going up. I mean, for accounting profession, for example, where accountants have traditionally read financial statements and made decisions, now they're being forced to learn how to do basic coding and be data system managers, right? So now they have to continuously go through a process of upskilling, even though they had their accounting degree many years back. So in order to advance our human capital, we need to put structures that allow for continuous upskilling.
Yeah, absolutely. And Doctor, I want to ask your opinion on the advancement and emergence of robots in the workforce in Africa and the educational system, to be quite frank, and about the future of work and education in Africa and how robots will play a part in that as well. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
So in Africa, a lot of industries are not technologically savage, or a lot of industries are not exposed to technology. So the effects of robots have been very uneven on the continent. However, there are cases where these robots are making severe damage within the labor force. Like with me in my research study alone, there was a grading machine that could do the work of 60 workers. So 60 workers that could have been working in that specific pack house are not working in that pack house because of this particular machine. And as these robots continuously get released into society and absorb a lot of people's jobs, government has to have a plan to put these group of people who have just been unemployed by technology or robots into new industries or into new skill sets within society. So there has to be is it a funnel or a loop or an adequate plan, because these technologies are coming in a, I don't want to make it seem deterministic, but these technologies are coming and government needs to plan for that. So I do think there's a serious problem, but there are solutions to navigate that, as we have historically as human beings dealing with technology.
Yeah, absolutely. Doctor, I also wanted your opinion on, what do you think, AI and the advancement of it is really hindering our ability to give our students, practical or hands-on learning because, not every student is the same. So I'm wondering your thoughts on the relationship between the advancement of AI and how we can make sure that hands-on learning and experiential learning is still a part of curriculum. What are your thoughts there, especially across Africa? What are your thoughts, my friend?
Well, I think because AI is disrupting the educational system right now, right? There are ways of learning of how to memorize something, go into a test, write it in the exam. That's being done away with, right? Students are using a lot of AI to complete their work. So with that being said, I think more experiential um, mentorship programs should be created in order to move forward. but I don't think AI is eroding. It's a paradox in the sense. I don't think AI is eroding experiential knowledge. So, if I'll give you an example, in Zimbabwe, there's a company that is giving VR AI headsets to rural students who have been learning about science and chemistry, but outside of labs because those schools are very poor and run down. Like the infrastructure, there's no labs there. But these VR AI sets are giving them the opportunity that as they are busy mixing chemicals within the VR sets, they're gaining actually much more experience than they would previously without that technology, just being within the rural classroom and theorizing what these chemicals do when they interact with each other because they don't have a lab. So we're seeing AI there, AI and VR sets play a role in giving them giving them experience and practical ways to a degree to learn about science in that science field. So there's no one fits all answer. It's a bit it's an uneven what we're seeing is an uneven unfolding of events.
Yeah, absolutely. And Doctor, I am someone who was born with a disability, and I'm always curious to ask people like you about how we advance the workplace forward for individuals with disabilities, especially in the work that you do across Africa. How do you think technology and AI can make the world of work more accessible, specifically for people with disabilities? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
I think there's a lot of potential for AI to assist within the world of disabilities. It's just unfortunate now, and I'm not an expert in this corner of research, but from what I've seen, is that AI tends to have bias against people with disabilities because of the way it's trained. So, like the AI systems that won't be able to recognize certain facial expression of employees who have autism, for example, because of
Mm-hmm.
the way that it's trained, or because of how certain disabled people express themselves or write. AI systems mistakenly may have an output that they're underperforming. And the problem is that these companies are not including disabled people in their opinions within the training of that particular data. And more work needs to be done in order for these technologies to be inclusive within the workplace. So we need to advocate for more um, representative data to include disabled individuals within the workplace.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Doctor, I'm also curious to ask you about the mental health side of the digital transformation process and its relationship to artificial intelligence and, the human sort of cost of AI from a mental health standpoint. So tell me your thoughts on how we can use AI to its maximum effectiveness, but also being aware of the mental health effects. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Okay, so the mental health effects I can speak of is regarding to the workplace. So we have a lot of employees that are showing a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear of these technologies. I mean, from part of the sample group from my research, they saw like robotic arms in the citrus packers, literally doing what they do much more quicker. So their workforce reduced, and they're seeing these technologies take their job. So this creates a mental toll where they are wondering what's next and what comes out of it. But ironically, other surveys and other studies show that within the African context, employees are optimistic of using these AIs, right? Because they see it as an opportunity, even more than other employee groups in the global north. And the reason for that is a lot of African jobs are insecure and unstable. So AI is seen as a way out, where unlike in the global north, maybe there's more secure jobs and AI is seen as something that could take away. So we're seeing an uneven mental health response to how these technologies affect employee mental health within the workplace. I think the thing that really allows AI to be allowed, I think the thing that really eases employees' psychological stress around this thing is if management always communicates the intention with these technologies or communicates the plan with these technologies, or I see and communicates how they plan to upskill their current workforce, or and maybe move away from displacement, because displacement is not always the only answer. I mean, there's companies that have used these technologies to improve productivity, to expand. You know, so
Yeah,
it's a mismatch right now.
yeah, absolutely. And Doctor, I'm curious to ask you about organizational culture and how do you think AI is both improving organizational culture and where it's coming up short in terms of making sure that organizations still have a chance to sort of build a human-centered culture. So, what do you think is AI's effect on building thriving organizational cultures, my friend?
Okay, so AI is definitely reshaping organizational cultures in many ways. Some bad, some good. So, a bad example is that in South Africa there was a case where medical aid fraud schemes, like medical aid, disproportionately accused people of color of fraud, black practitioners, like in hospital organizations, right? And these black practitioners were confused, like, wait, why? Well, like, what's going on? And they went to go report it. And when there was an investigation, they found that an AI was deciding disproportionately that black practitioners were committing fraud. And this had serious consequences to their organizations, like delayed payments, like they couldn't do certain medical procedures. So that can affect the culture in a very negative light or in a very negative setting, right? Um, and no one who's accountable for what this AI's actions are doing, because the medical aids, they were saying it's not us, the algorithm is the one that decided, right? So who accounts for this? So that really put a stain in people who protest, and people who have written about this particular this particular wrong that has been done in that particular organization. At the same time, there are other AI systems that, like in human resource, right, that would hire or would shortlist or would promote people within organizations to people with English names. So I'm James, so I'm more likely to get a promotion or to be shortlisted by an AI than someone who would have an indigenous local name from their mother's tongue, right? Like Tando. So this ends up creating a horrible organization culture within that particular organization, where people realize that AI systems are biased and can work biasly against them. But at the same time, like I said, it's a yin and yang situation where a lot of employees are also reporting that AI is accelerating the culture of productivity, right? Of where they're just trying to reach the next goal and get the goal out of the way, and reach managers' expectations. So it's a bit of both. It's shaping it in a bit of both ways, and we just need to find some regulations to make sure it's responsible in not having negative bias against the employees.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Doctor, I am going to ask you your opinion on this survey from Ipsos that showed over last year that a portion of the population thinks AI will dramatically affect the way that we live our everyday lives over the next 3 to 5 years. They showed an increase of people believing that between 60 and 69%, and moreover, 52% expressed nervousness about how AI products and services, will make an impact on their lives from a negative perspective. So I'm curious about your thoughts. And by the way, it's a 13-point rise from 2022 in America when the Pew Research Center first reported that. So I'm curious to ask you about your thoughts on those findings and how you think AI we can ease the concerns of people who are worried about the emergence of AI. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
I think people's anxiety about AI is like completely rational, right? What's happening is like people can see that there's something big that's changing, and they've watched a lot of Matrix, Terminator, those movies of AI taking over. But I think a lot of the fear is people are scared of what they don't understand, right? So they over exaggerate the amount of control or damage or erosion that AI can particularly do. I think that if every single individual within society try to learn AI and gain some AI literacy, it will take us a long way, because right now the reason why companies can do whatever they want with no regulation is because the average citizen is ill-informed, so they don't have the power to boycott, like, or to boycott AI companies' products, to say this is wrong or this is right. And historically, we all know that we have boycotted technologies from companies that hurt our communities. And right now, there's no real understanding of how these technologies are hurting our communities or making decisions on our everyday lives. Also, if the general masses were much more educated, right? Every time there's a parties or a campaign, a government's campaign for elections, it's a problem that these governments do not speak about their particular AI strategy of how they're going to move forward, right? And they don't do that because the masses don't know. There's no need to campaign or to speak to those points because the masses just don't know. So I bring all that to say that your fear is due to is rational, and there's things to be afraid of, but it's also over exaggerated by lack of knowledge. It's also the lack of knowledge also feeds into a sense of being disempowered to do anything. And if individuals actually took the time to do some AI literacy, just go on YouTube, just go learn. You can now boycott certain AI products. You can now pressure governments to a specific directions, and you can now drive how these AIs are specifically working within your industry and within your life, because you're much more knowledgeable about it, and not just accepting, the T's and C's that when you switch on, when you open your ChatGPT account or your Gemini account, you're actively participating with how these things are, not just being a recipient.
Yeah, and Doctor, I'm curious to ask you about your opinion on if I asked you uh, if you considered AI a modern convenience today. I wonder how you would complete that sentence, why or why not you would believe that, and do you think curiosity and artificial intelligence are interconnected in any way? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
So if I understood your question, is you're asking me if AI is a convenience? I think no. Calling AI a convenience is maybe misleading in some sense. It might feel like that when you're using something like a chatbot or navigation app, but underneath that, AI is literally restructuring how decisions are made across multiples of society in multiple different ways. It's influencing how people get hired, how work is organized, how businesses operate. So it's far from even how governments allocate resources and plan. I mean, look at how important AI is within the American war, right? Versus Iran. So it's not just as an inconvenience. It can make life easier in small ways, yes, but at a deeper level, it's changing systems. It's changing how we live and how we even see each other as a human, or how we perceive what being human is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what do you think about artificial intelligence relationship to the concept of curiosity and always pushing the envelope forward and asking more questions about how AI affects us and can improve or detract from our lives? So, how do you think curiosity is connected to the advancement of artificial intelligence?
Mm. Um, I think there's an interesting relationship between curiosity and AI. I mean, on one hand, AI exists because of a human curiosity. I mean, we have always wanted to understand and predict the world better. That's just like a human thing. But now AI is also shaping our curiosity, right? The content we see, the questions we even ask, even the topics we explore are increasingly being influenced by algorithms. Even the person who's watching this particular video, an algorithm pushed it up onto their screen. So that can be helpful. AI can expose it to new ideas, like you're borrowing a system with like 200 IQ points, like you're borrowing a 200, they're adding 200 IQ points to whatever you're doing, right? Um, so it can make you curious in many ways. It can help you with curiosity in many ways. You just have to be careful that it doesn't narrow your thinking. Um, by that, I mean, so that you're not dependent on the AI's output, that you're the one who's driving your own curiosity and not the system quietly guiding you, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And Doctor, I'm also curious to ask you a little bit about yourself, my friend. And just talking to you over the last half an hour, I can see that you're particularly passionate for this work. So I'm wondering if you can give me a little bit more about your background and why you're so, animated and excited about the work that you do, buddy.
Sure, sure. I think Uh, okay, let me tell you a little bit about myself. So I'm originally from Zimbabwe, but I relocated to South Africa to study. And during my studies, that's when I was fortunate to be in a university that's obsessed with AI and its social impact. And that's when the love for this technology and what it does is really came and affected me. The thing that drives me, I would say, is that I feel like it has so much potential to change a lot of Africans' lives. I mean, I'll give you an example. In Malawi, there's an app called Mlwazi, an AI app, where they're giving rural agricultural farm workers, like who normally create output for subsistence, and these people are not exposed to education, but the government has aided in a project where they've given them this AI app that guides them through their agricultural progress their agricultural output in an area where there's floods and cyclones. And what has shown is that these AI apps help these farmers, and they've increased these farmers' output greatly. So it's just an example of how this technology can change the life of a rural African person within this continent. And that change is what drives me to be involved, look at the social impact, and be aware of the adverse consequences that these technologies can have as well, and guide the African continent in making sure they make the right decisions in adopting these technologies, building these technologies, and regulating these technologies.
Yeah, absolutely. And Doctor, I've got two questions left for you. And the first of those two questions is this: I'm wondering your thoughts on your greatest hope or aspiration for the future of education and the workforce development in Africa, and how you hope the advancement of AI contributes to the digital transformation and the overall quality of education and the workforce in Africa. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Um, at this current stage, oh, at this current stage, a lot of AI systems within the educational sector are not fully adapt within the African context. My hopes is that that will change. I do believe AI tutors can help push education forward and help with digital transformation and help with the skill sets and help with getting people prepared for the future within the African context. But right now, there's still a lot that needs to be done. For example, a lot of AI is spoken in English or written in English. I mean, or is trained through English data. And a lot of Africans don't speak English as their first language, so they can't even access that technology per se. So it's in my hopes that we can train our own AI to reskill our own workforce to get people ready for the next stage of the improvement of Africa.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, Doctor, when you look at your own life and legacy, I'm curious how you want your legacy to be defined from a personal and professional standpoint, my friend.
From a personal standpoint, I would like my life to be one that encourages people, make people realize that they always have agency, that they don't have to feel victimized to any situation. Like there's always something you can do to better your life wherever you're at, wherever you stand from. From a professional side, I would like to, there's a mantra that I have or a quote that I have that if Africa does not shape AI, then AI will shape Africa. So I would want to be one of the people from a professional standpoint that help shape these technologies within the African context to help towards flourishment.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, Doctor, tell me if people want to get connected with all the good work that you're doing, what's the best way they can do that?
I'll say through my LinkedIn, at James Maisiri, or email at jamesmaisiri, the number one at gmail.com.
Fabulous. Well, Doctor, I really appreciate your insights and expertise in the fields
Thank
of
you.
both digital transformation and artificial intelligence, my friend. I want to thank you for the good work that you're doing inside the workforce and educational sectors, and I want to thank you today for engaging in conversation with me. It's most appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate it.